pay for that, right? Would you like to say anything?
It's good to be back. I appreciate all the support everybody's given me. It's gonna be a tough year, I can warn you all now.
Very good, very good, fair enough. So thank you for serving, and, we are eagerly awaiting us all getting back to work. First on the agenda, I would like to, as it's customary that we do, a pledge of stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and follow it with a moment of silence. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Before we get into our budget workshop, we have some housekeeping items to take care of. So we're gonna move to number 3. We have 4 resolutions under action item. Terry, there you are. We'll present what they all mean to us.
Thank you all
Welcome.
for agreeing to meet tonight for this special meeting. I think when I was here last week, I told you they would probably give me about a week. And I got the notification on Thursday that they're due this Thursday. So I was right on the money there. So we discussed some projects that you wanted me to submit applications for. So I'm gonna be doing that in the next few days. We must have resolutions from the board to be able to submit. So that's why we're having this special meeting tonight. So thank you for that. The first one is the bidirectional antennas for the schools. As we discussed at the last meeting, these are necessary because of those construction of the schools really hinder radio, cell phone usage, whatnot in the schools, and make it very dangerous for first responders as much as the school community itself in an emergency situation, especially getting in touch back with dispatch or dispatch getting in touch with them. I think our coverage is around 70% in these buildings, some a little bit more than others, but we just spent $5.5 million on an emergency radio project. We need to get that up there. Those estimated costs $1 million for that. There would be no match for that one. The other one, the water main improvements, this would be the same one that we just received the money for from Inman's office. It's a 20% match. And we'd be asking for about the same amount, again, for further improvements in Sandersville mains. Then the other one is for the purchase of a heavy duty lift for vehicle maintenance facility. I expect there to be about a 20-25% match on that one. It's $150,000. And then the final one is the renovation of the old Rescue Squad EMS building to move the EOC from its current location in the new building, because it is too small, it's woefully too small for any large scale emergency, over to this building, because it has a lot bigger room for a meeting room in it. That would make more sense, but it needs a lot of renovations. It needs foundation needs to be repaired, the roof needs to be repaired, needs electrical, plumbing, waterproofing, and moving administrative offices for EMS over. We are already outgrowing our building that we spent $2.5 million on in 21, so we need to have space better. But it's right there on the same property, it makes sense. There's also the garage underneath for them to be able to park ambulances, and the goal is to maybe use additional space for other county departments as needed. So I'm here tonight asking if you would approve these resolutions so that I may submit to the grants.
Okay. What I'd like to do, I'll just call one out, see if there's discussion, and then we'll make a motion and vote. So A would be the first one, which is for the bidirectional antenna. Is there any questions for Terry? Do I have a motion?
Sure. I move that we approve a resolution allowing the county administrator to submit an application for community project funding for FY27 for the bidirectional antenna by the March 5th, 2026 due date.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution for the bidirectional antenna. Roll call vote. Ms. Durham?
Aye.
Mr. Goolsby?
Aye.
Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartown?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Item B, approve resolution to submit water main improvements. Any questions? Any discussion? Looking for a motion?
Approve resolution to submit water main improvements to the community project funding for FY27, from Ms. Terry Biggett, the grant writer. Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, Ms. Durham?
Aye.
Mr. Goolsby?
Aye.
Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartown?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. C, approve resolution to submit, for the purchase of a heavy-duty lift at vehicle maintenance. Any questions? Okay, do you have a motion?
I move that we approve a resolution allowing the county administrator to submit an application for the community project funding for FY 2027 for the purchase of a heavy-duty lift by the March 5th, 2026 due date.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to purchase, to submit application to try to purchase a heavy-duty lift. Roll call vote, Ms. Durham?
Aye.
Mr. Goolsby?
Aye.
Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartown?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. D, approve resolution to submit the renovation of the old EMS building for community project funding. Any discussion?
Do we know approximately about
Sorry.
how much that was?
Yes,
gonna cost?
700,000.
700.
Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
So are they gonna take like a special I-beam underneath for the foundation?
So we've
to
had them
raise it?
come out, we've had them come out to, give us an estimate of the cost of fixing the foundation, yeah.
I mean, because, the rescue squads that we have now are too tall to go in.
Oh, you mean for
Yeah.
the, no, the ambulance does fit
Okay.
as far as that goes, on the one side.
Thank you.
Not both of them, but on one.
And did you say there was a match?
It would probably be a 20-25% match.
20-25%.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Looking for a motion?
So moved.
I move that we approve resolution allowing the county administrator to submit an application for community project funding for FY 2027 renovation to the old EMS building by the March 5th, 2026 due date.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the resolution. Roll call vote, Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartown?
Aye.
Mr. Goolsby?
Aye.
Ms. Durham?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am.
you.
Thank you.
Mr. Goolsby? Make a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
I get a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn this special meeting and go into workshop. Roll call vote, Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartown?
Aye.
Mr. Goolsby?
Aye.
Ms. Durham?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. All right, well, we got that done, so now we're ready for our workshop. So we'll start with Ms. Schafrik for budget presentation.
All right, good, I guess it's afternoon, evening, I'm not sure. But, happy to present this, get this budget process kicked off. And, I just wanna take a second to acknowledge all the work that's gone into it so far, which is not even half of the work that still has to be done. So I appreciate everything the board's gonna have to do as we have a tight time frame just in the next couple months to get a lot of decisions made and a lot of work done. I mean, even routine budgets are a lot of work, and routine budgets are kind of the exception, not the rule. And this is definitely not a routine budget. So what I'm presenting today is the compilation of all the requests that we've received, with staff's first review of it. But most of the decisions, you know, you guys have the wonderful privilege and wonderful burden of having to make those policy decisions, and, you know, with a lot of community input. So that's what we'll be doing for the next few weeks. So, you know, when you say March Madness, you may think of basketball, but pretty much it's gonna be a budget for all of us. The theme of this budget is managing through austerity, that you see at the top of my slides. All right, where's that? So moving on, I do have a lot of slides, but I'll go through them quickly. This is just our obligation to create a balanced budget. What you see in front of you is balanced, but it's never gonna be the same budget. You're always gonna be making lots of good changes, and we'll end up with a balanced budget at the end of it. We also have a challenge with the Dillon rule. I'm not gonna read this slide, but basically, what the Dillon rule means is we as localities only have the powers expressly granted to us by the state. So we can't make up new sources of revenue, we are really restricted in our, even changing the type of work we do. We still have regulatory responsibilities, whether the state funds them or not, and I'll speak about that a little bit more. The benefits of local government, you know, the good thing about local government is it's the most responsive to the needs of citizens. You know, and the basic amenities that you really need, water, sanitation, you know, fire, police, citizen, all that stuff is done at the local level, schools. And the delivery, of those services is, you know, we all live in these communities that we're serving, so that's personally why I love local government. We do perform regulatory functions, zoning, land use policies, you know, building codes, et cetera, et cetera. So, this is the challenge. We've got all these competing budget priorities, limited resources. So it's like a basket of puppies where you have to pick two. I mean, you wanna take them all, but you can't. So you know, but we have to have some kind of framework to make a decision. So these are some of the guiding principles that we're using. We're only gonna use one-time sources of funds for one-time expenditures. Any ongoing expenses have to have an ongoing source of revenue. We do have emergency needs that can be funded with contingency rather than all departments. We did have to cut our contingency budget way back to be able to balance this budget, so that might be something you wanna look at. And we used a modified zero-based budgeting, that is, when we got the requests, which you do all have the original requests, we looked at everything, not just the new stuff, we looked at the entire budget to see what we could, and you'll see little changes where some stuff was brought up, some stuff was brought down. But we did have to put in inflationary impacts. Those are small, you know, like contractually obligated, or just to be able to, you know, inflation's hitting, we're still buying all the same stuff everybody else is buying, and everything costs more. So, moving on, you know, this is just a little sampling of the array of services that we have. We have lots of different populations that we serve, so just throwing in some pictures so you can see that. Taxpayers always wanna know, what am I gonna get from local government? I'm paying all these taxes, what do I get? You get great schools, you get safe and healthy communities, you get justice, you get recreational opportunities. That's just a high level view. There's lots of things that people get. But what we also wanna look at is the level of service. You can have basically criminals on the bottom here, like you're basically not fulfilling what the state has told us we have to do in terms of service. And then there's the, you know, platinum highest level. We're always trying to be somewhere in the middle, and it may be different, you know, for public safety agencies, it may be, we put more of the things we desire in there, and for everybody else, we're doing just more basic or expected, you know, we're just kinda shooting for the middle, and that's where we need to get the priorities of the board, particularly in the community. And we've got, you know, populations increasing, it's not going up as dramatically as some of the counties around us. I think Louisa has the highest population growth right now, but it's still going up. And all of those are people who need services. We have challenges. We've got all kinds of pressures that make uncertainty in this budget process, cause today is March 3rd, 2026. We're talking about approving a budget that's gonna go through June 30th, 2027, which is, you know, 18 months from now, so, or not 18 months, it's more like 15 months, but you're making decisions like way into the future, and that's hard. So we gotta leave ourselves a little bit of flexibility, but, you know, we can manage through a lot of this uncertainty. we have, we do get money from the federal and state governments, but we're seeing more and more devolution, or they're pushing down some of those costs. So for example, the big drivers in this budget is the state support for schools has decreased. They changed the LCI, which is the local composite index, which essentially says, hey, Greene, you can afford to pay more for schools, so we're gonna give you less. We have Children's Services Act calculations. The state's not sharing in as much of those costs, which we're required to provide. And that's gonna increase what we have to pay by $230,000. And we also have, issues with the compensation board. We have many, and I have more slides on that, but they don't pay 100% of those constitutional staff salaries, so the locality chips in money for even those comp board funded positions, in addition to the locally funded positions. So, as an example, to drill in that last point a little bit more, these are the constitutional officers that we have. They are funded from the state comp board and their staffs, but we do have to supplement them with local funds. So as an example, there are 16 staff in the sheriff's office that are partially funded. It's about 70% of their salaries are funded by the state. And then the county pays 30% for those 16, and then there's 16 other deputy positions that are wholly locally funded, 100% funded by the locality. We have the issue with the state compensation board in the last few years is, one, I've already talked about the underfunding, and it's not like we can say we're not gonna do law enforcement. We have to do law enforcement because of the Dillon rule and other, requirements from the state, as I mentioned. They have very rigid staffing and funding formulas. So those staffing formulas don't always represent the local reality. So you may say, why is the comp board only funding 16 of the 32 positions? It's, they're not really meant to cover all of it, and it gets also to level of service. Their level of service may be like just barely doing what we have to do, and as a community, we've decided that it's important to us, we're gonna do more. We also have unpredictable budget outcomes. The last couple of years, they may make a decision late in the process because they have funding available, or they can also say we don't have enough funding available. So we get these things like in April, and it's really difficult to deal with any information or changes that come up at that late in the game. Right now we have 36 comp board funded positions. Those positions are, fully funding those positions is $2.8 million. The state pays about 2.1, which is about 73, almost 74%, the county pays the rest. So when the comp board does make its decision to increase the funding for their comp board positions, all they're doing is closing that gap, because they're not fully funding them anyway. Does that make sense? So you can see, so maybe instead of the state paying 74, if they add money to the locality, maybe now they're paying 80%. But they're not closing the gap to pay 100%. And I only bring that up because no doubt we'll get something from the comp board that we'll have to revisit that discussion to see what they're doing. So these are the major themes. We've got aging infrastructure. We all know why we have to address this. Really austerity. So there were lots of great things staff, they want help, they wanna do everything to their best of their ability. They want everything to be as nice as possible for residents, but being able to, this is not the environment to expand programs. Rural preservation, that's not something where we're gonna go buy up all this farmland, but we do have land use, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We have economic development. One question that most people are gonna have during this budget process is, how can we generate more revenue within the confines that the state allows us to? How can we reduce taxes? It's really gonna come down to economic development and commercial development. We only have 6% of the county that is designated for development, that type of development. And we need to maximize that 6% to its best, you know, to be as efficient as possible to get that revenue, because what commercial entities pay in taxes and what they demand in services, so what they do to our budget is much more favorable to the budget than when we add in more residents. Residents have kids that need to be educated, they're the ones calling 911, you know, like, there's a lot of demand on it. So if you're wondering why would commercial entities be willing to pay more in taxes than they may receive, you know, in actual services, it's because they wanna locate in places where we have good schools, where we have good communities. So it's you know, they'll actually seek out those places. And as we get more of that development that we're trying to get, it will benefit them as well as us, cause we'll be able to lower taxes. So, I guess I kinda jumped the gun, but economic development really does require safety, it requires good schools, infrastructure, which we are addressing through the water projects that are moving forward, and being able to have those available commercial parcels for them to go. And then, you know, on the other end of the scale, we reserve rural aspects by, continuing to support land use. That is deferred revenues annually of 1.5, almost $1.6 million. So the highlights of the budget, so just get into the, you know, topic sentence here. The budget increases, we did find almost 400,000 in agency reductions when we go through that process of looking at everybody's budget and seeing what all the requirements are. The budget is balanced, but it is, and I'm gonna talk a lot more about this in the next few slides, but we do have a proposed real estate tax increase of 9 cents. That would raise $2.88 million, which that entire 9 cents would be dedicated to the schools. We have a 4% increase in compensation for county employees built in. That 4% is 3% for COLA, 1% to progress through the range. So 3% is just to keep what you're making now equal to, you know, the previous year, but you also need to move through the range, otherwise, you know, after 30 years, you shouldn't be at the beginning of the range. Schools have built in 5% compensation in their budget. And this does ensure continuity of operations for all the departments. We have, it's just like, we have a lot of slides that are gonna say pretty much the same thing, but this just shows you the split between the budget. When we have that general fund budget for the county, we are not, putting in there that 3.93%, which is a pass-through for the locally administered project that we're doing, the Route 670 project, because that is money that's coming to the county so that we can pay for that, so we can't use it for anything else. And the, general fund transfers to schools, if we did give them that 2.88 million, so we went ahead, just so you could see what that would look like. That would increase the general fund transfer to them to 22.4 million. And they're here to talk a lot more about their process and everything, that has come to pass very recently. I was here in January to do a budget workshop. We were estimating at the time, schools were estimating $2 to $3 million impact. As information came in, it ended up being a $4.2 million impact, which you might have seen if you saw what the school board adopted as their request to send to us, last Tuesday? I think it was last Tuesday. No, last Wednesday. This is just like an at a glance. We have this in the citizens guide that'll be out by Thursday. This just gives you the highlight of what we're looking at, and population, the real estate tax, the county position. These are the things that changed. So I just have them summarized. Again, doesn't include that pass-through funding. This is the proposed advertised tax categories. So you see, the real estate and then the public service corporation, which is real estate for public service, that's going up to 78 cents. But holding steady with personal property, which is at 4, and industrial machine tools is not changed. And then just so you know, a penny on the tax rate is 319,871. So I've got a huge slide that has that to make it easier for us to find. So 9 cents, what does that mean? So if you have a house, just as an example, if your house is worth, or your assessment is $350,000, that's an annual increase of $315. So if you're paying it as part of your mortgage, that's gonna be an increase of $26.25 a month. 500,000, you can see $450 a year. If I take that $450 divided by 12, that's $37.50 a month. Added, if you're paying, as an example, many people pay that as part of a mortgage. And if you have a $650,000 house, and then you can see some examples there for commercial, it's the same rate, so it's just a few other examples of how that math works. You've got, again, this is the big slide that has 319,871 for what it is. Now, this is not a reassessment year, last year was. We do it every 2 years. That means that there's no change to the real estate tax base unless you are building on to your property somehow. And we pick that up when you apply for the permits to do that, like finishing in a basement or adding a big shed or like whatever it is that you're doing that might change your assessed value. And of course, if we're adding new stock, so as a new house is built, that also gets added to the base. But I'm just saying, if you already have an assessment, it's not changing this year, it's exactly what it was last year. This is just a pie chart to show you where it comes from. And you can see, why are we talking about just the real estate tax? Why do we only, why do we calculate the penny? The blue section of pie is representing the biggest piece of revenue that comes in. That comes in from real estate tax. The orange piece of pie is personal property tax, so on vehicles. And then you see other pieces of pie, other local taxes. That yellow is a compilation of a whole bunch of different ones. So it's easier to see on this chart. So you can see how much money is coming in from those other, those different categories. And we do get, as you can see there, a good amount of money from the federal government and the state. We also have, this is just to give you an idea of what the taxable real estate values are, and that's what gets, we apply the tax rate to those. So that just gives you an idea of how much money that represents. Well, let me go back here. So you will see it does change year to year. So I just said that, it's not a reassessment year, so everybody stays flat. But people are always doing things to their houses, and we're always building, like there are new houses that are being built. Particularly the big developments like Creekside, which is, there's a lot of new houses that are coming online there. So we do, as part of the budget, we do review all the fees, because we wanna look not just at what we're spending, but also what money we're taking in and making sure we're competitive. Some fees may need to go down, some may need to go up. But what we're doing is syncing everything so that we're looking at the rates at the same time and making decisions about the expenditures for those agencies and trying to balance the budget and make everything, all the rates change effective July 1. It's a lot simpler to explain. It doesn't feel like, sometimes I say death by duck bite, where it's like constant little changes. It just feels more overwhelming than it is. So very few, this list is small, but it's also very, very little additional revenue. So these were not revenue generating. These were just right sizing or to make for more efficient operations. So the minimum for the solid waste scale was $7 a vehicle, now it'll be 10. And that's just based on analysis and work that's done at solid waste. It's not a revenue generating, it's really more, just to stay in line with what the market says it should be. These detached residential structures, so these might be like, sheds that are built or something, those actually require a lot of inspections, so we are, increasing the minimum so that it more, is in line with how many times our inspectors have to go out there and look at those properties. It's not a common, like that category is not designed to raise revenue, it's really just more to, as we looked at every little fee and everything that needs to be, examined, that was one of the changes that we made. The, new resident inspection fees, permits over 800 square feet are gonna increase by $100. And again, that's just based on the amount of work that it takes to actually do those inspections. And water and sewer rates are, requested to raise by 3% across the board. So that will raise, about 151,000. And just as a reminder, all those water projects we're doing, all of that is fully funded by water and sewer ratepayers, as well as what developers are paying to connect to the water system. And that's the, EDU fee, the connection fee, and that's $12,250. And that's bringing in revenue as people are building new houses and connecting in. We also have, so that's where it comes from, and this is where it goes. So this is where we have the different disbursements going. So as you see the yellow, pale yellow on the left, that's schools. And then public safety is that lighter blue, that's a big piece of pie. So you see, in line with the community's values and what they would like to see, the majority of the money is going to schools and public safety, which is the core function of a local government. And then we have other requirements of things we have to do, smaller programs. So you'll see, parks and recreation, libraries, public works, health, community development, those types of things. Those are the broader categories that we have. We have, this just kind of shows you the county's budget versus the school's budget, and they're very close. We built in the increase of that $2.88 million for the public schools, so you can see, what that would look like. And of course, that's, really should be TBD and some, because you guys still have to make that decision, but because I'm presenting this as a balanced budget, you need to see the actual number, and then you can change the number accordingly. So this isn't written in stone, but I just wanted you to be able to see the perspective. Of that $53.4 million for public schools, that county transfer would increase to $22.4 million. And also on the county budget side, again, doesn't include that pass-through funding of that 3.9 that the state is giving us as a pass-through, so we can locally administer that 670 project. And school board obviously is here to talk a lot more, but they did adopt that budget on February 25th, so that was just last week. The total proposed operating budget is $55,581,929. That's more than what you just saw on the previous slide, that was $53 million, and that's because 2.88 is not the 4.2 that they balance their budget request on. So already, we have reduced that budget, and, again, all my departments that turn things in, the constitutional offices, we've all had, nobody got their full request, so I will just say that too. That that FY27 request is an increase, from last year, and they'll explain how that came to be. This is just a.
4.892 or 4.2?
Well, the 4.892 is the total request. That's not what they're asking for from the general fund, because they have other other ways that they were balancing, so.
Okay.
This was actually the discussion that we had earlier today, because it includes capital funding, right? That's what we said was the difference, but the schools will be able to help answer that. I just wanna show you these different ways of looking at it, because when you look at the charts and slicing and dicing, I just wanna talk through all those big issues. This is just another way of looking at it. If you took $1 and divided it up, you could see, you know, the general fund transfers to schools about 41.6% of all the general fund, and our part's 58.4. You, here's another $1 that's divided up. If you divide $1 up, remember I was showing you on a piece of pie, this is just another way of doing it. That $1 shows public schools versus public safety's the next biggest category, like you saw on the pie chart. And then other departments is 15 million, or 28.1% of the rest of the budget. And that includes things like debt service and not water and sewer debt service, but debt service as it relates to other county programs. This is just, again, a chart. Sometimes it's easier to look at the chart. We gave you the increases and decreases, and this includes more than just the general fund, because you can see water and sewer on there. This is just our projected revenues. And that doesn't include that $1.5 million from the school capital fund. And then the expenditure requests that we have, this is just again, another cut of the data. This is school operating budget. This is just, we did little baby fund statements for the biggest costs, you know, the biggest programs. So I'll go through this really fast. I do have a footnote here because the state revenue, the state's still working on their budget, so none of those are final numbers, and so that may change. And this is the Children's Services Fund, CSA. This just shows you the increase that we're going to have to put based on the changes I already talked about. And James is here to talk more about that. This is the Solid Waste Fund. And we will have Tom Hutka to talk about water and sewer. This is a water fund on Thursday. We have my department's coming, we have constitutional officers, me and the schools today, and then other departments on Thursday. Social Services Fund, this just, again, shows you what's happening with the different revenues and expenditures. Funded positions. So we did, in January, talk in the workshop about looking at ways to fund some additional positions. And I wanted to get some feedback from you all on that. We did add a new paramedic and a new EMT to the budget. To do that, we went back into EMS's budget and looked at places where we could cut operating back. And we were cutting back from the request, but, so it wasn't so much against next year as much as what, you know, where we might be able to find some, curbing some of those expense and increases. And a little bit, you know, you'll be able to see the detail, and we'll get into more of that later. But it wasn't just added on top of all the inflationary increases. Same thing's true with the deputy sheriff position. They asked for 4, and we'll talk about that on the next slide, but we were able to find funding for 1 deputy sheriff position. And let me also say, it's not on here because they're not new positions, but we have 3 school resource officers that were funded from a grant. That grant paid for half of the salary. So locally, we paid half, and the state paid half. That grant ended this fiscal year. So next fiscal year, we'll have to make up that other half of the difference, which is another 1.5 worth of positions. There is an opportunity that Ms. Biggie talked about at the last board meeting to ask for an extension of the grant, which we have applied for based on your resolution to tell us to go forward with that. The feedback we got there's no guarantee we're gonna get it. And the feedback we got was if we get anything, it will just be for the high school SRO. So we do need to keep the budget in there for the other half of these positions so we can keep the school resource officers. There's an office clerk that will be fully funded by the state. So we had talked about that last time as being kind of the easy one to add, because we're gonna get fully reimbursed. So even not giving it won't do anything to help us balance the budget. We do have a receptionist, a half-time position to add to building inspections to help with, as you can see, lots of new buildings coming, lots of new requests for inspections, and there's a lot of administrative work that goes into that. That will be a huge help, and that will be fully paid for by inspection fee revenues. So when you get an inspection, you have to pay a fee. We're gonna use those fees to, pay for that other half position. Those fees cannot be used for any other program. So whether we give it, if we don't do this position, it doesn't do anything to help us balance the general fund budget, because that money can't be used on any other program except building inspections. Same thing's true with stormwater. There's one additional position that we've added, and that's gonna come from stormwater revenue. Can't be used for anything else, can't be used to balance the rest of the budget. I did add a fire coordinator to help, with a lot of the administrative work that has to be done, and we can talk through how we might best use that position. Just feeling like there's been, reports that have been done recommending that we add a paid staff person to help. In the past, I've requested a fire chief. This is different. This is a fire coordinator, somebody to help them with their training, help them, we'll have to talk through what we can best use them for, but. And then we have one automotive technician. Last week, this seemed like a good idea. We cut back the fuel budget because every year we've been having excess in fuel. Now, that may not be such a great idea, but I couldn't have expected Saturday, so and I don't even know what the long-term perspective is, so that's maybe something you wanna look at. But that was funded by taking some savings in their operating budget for fuel to fund that. And then we had discussed at the last workshop, budget workshop that was in January, adding one full-time family benefit specialist for DSS and a benefit specialist. Those will be funded by 70% by the state, so the county only has to pay 30% for these two very, very much needed positions. And then we added in one senior accountant for water and sewer, fully paid for by water and sewer funds. Now that the county, the water and sewer department has taken over, collecting payments from people. There are a lot of people that come in and pay. I'm sure, like, the treasurer can tell you all about that. What that was like, it is a lot of extra work, and just, when you're handling that much money, it's the best practice to have two people there. And, people have to go to lunch, people have, they're off or they're sick or, it's just, we only have two people that are doing that, plus there's other people in the office who can jump in and help. It's a way of making sure that we're doing the best that we can with that money. And that money is not gonna be used to balance the general fund, that would come out of water and sewers budget. These are all the positions that were not funded. Parks position to be a community event supervisor, IT analyst, 3 of the deputy sheriff positions. They also requested a full-time FOIA position. They requested a front desk receptionist. We had talked about at the workshop a tourism position that's not funded, and a full-time building inspector, but there wasn't enough building inspection fees to cover a full-time building inspector, so we didn't add it. And EMS had also asked for a full-time pharmacy position to deal with the state required work that, that's one of the devolution things that the state pushed down, more mandates on how we manage pharmaceuticals. So those 10 positions were not funded. This is, so capital improvement. we've talked about the sheriff facility upgrade. We would like to propose to borrow that money for 5 years to fund that. But we would like to start it now, and we're gonna talk more about it today, I don't wanna steal the sheriff's thunder. But essentially, the issue that, I have a sheet for each one of these. We've been talking about the ERP since I got here, and the vehicle maintenance department, those are for new vehicles. Water and sewer, that's the second phase of the money for the reservoir and the water treatment plant. So I put those in this fiscal year, those could be done next fiscal year. They're separate from the general fund money, but to get that started so we can really bring the project home, because it's not gonna get cheaper. So here's a sheet for each one. This is the facility upgrade we talked about. The project costs are gonna be about $900,000, they were estimated to be. That included $200,000 for a fence and a gate. We took, we already had $300,000. We took the fence and the gate off, so that brought it down to $7. We already had $3, so the estimate that they're asking for is, that's how we got to the $400. And this was, something that was started with the building needs assessment that was done in 2019. And if the work doesn't begin this spring, the vendors have said that they aren't going, they're not going to be available for us because they're going to work on data centers and some other stuff. Also, we're worried about how the costs have been increasing. This is, there's a lot of kids in here who've probably never seen a green screen or even know what that is. But this is a system that we've had. I've been trying really hard to figure out when it came to the county, but asking employees that started in 91 who said it was already here when they got here. I don't know if the treasurer.
April 1st, 1998.
Oh, no.
1998 is when.
No, because it was being used for some other stuff. It wasn't being fully used, but Crystal, who started in, I think, 91, said that they were using it for other things.
It might have not been what we know it today. AS400 was developed in 1988, and then 1998 is when we signed on to use it as we know it today.
Yeah, I have a lot of staff that weren't even born then. Actually, maybe some of you on the dais weren't born then. But, or were, so this program's old is the point. And given the age and what's going on, we don't know how much longer it's gonna be supported. The initial amount of funding that we were asking for, that 200,000, so we need to start the project by getting a consultant to come in and help us get the project going and do the requirements analysis. And what I mean is, you don't just run out and buy a system. It's just like you wouldn't run out and buy a house without figuring out how many bedrooms do you need, how big do you want the kitchen, do you want the bedroom on the first floor, how many stories do you want? There's a lot of things that aren't wrong answers, but we have to figure out what those are. And it may be the BAI gets replaced with a system that's, there's specialty modules that the treasurer needs and commissioner of revenue needs in particular, and maybe even schools. But we need to look at it all together, and we need to look at, what that does to our system architecture for IT. So and that's what we need the consultant to come in and help us with that requirement analysis. And whatever money's left over would be applied to, we'll have a better idea of what kind of system we're gonna be looking for. It could be that we integrate a few different systems. It could be we find one system that does everything. It's way too early to tell. A lot of work needs to be done blueprinting our processes and figuring all of that out. And that's probably gonna take the next year, and we'll be able to use that money to do that. To get all of that figured out up front, and then the big cost will be buying the software and then implementing the software. But there's a lot of work we gotta figure out ourselves before we go, we can talk to vendors, but we're not gonna pick anything. The vehicle replacement program, that's $704,000. This is the list of the vehicles, and we'll have a explanation when we do the staff reports on how we're doing the replacement program. but basically, we're kind of in a place now where it's about the same every year, so that we're able to not have a year where we've gotta buy like 20 buses or something. So I think, or the sheriff department doesn't have old bus, you know, like, he has enough vehicles, not only for what they need, but also replacement. They hit a deer. There was a bad couple weeks where there was a deer, a different accident for this reason, and, you know, for other reasons, a lot of vehicles went out of commission. You just never know, how that's gonna go. In other weeks, everybody's in commission. And then what I talked about, phase 2 of the funding, that, forgot what it was 33 point whatever million dollars. That's to get the last tranche of funding to be able to do this impoundment project. And because we've been using one-time funds, so for the money that I was saying we should borrow, we had been using unreserved fund balance to pay for that, just pay for it outright. We're not doing that this year, we can't do that, you know, can't keep doing that forever. If we finance it, I want to use proffer money, which is one-time money, and only proffer money can be used for these capital projects. Proffer money cannot be used to balance the budget, but we would have just enough money to be able to pay the first year of the, you know, payment of debt for borrowing, you know, short-term funding for the sheriff's department, and then also doing the 27 program where we do the ERP and the vehicles. But we have to have a managed capital reserve. So my proposal is at the end of the year, we take 40% of the unreserved ending balance when the conditions of your fiscal management policy are met, and we put those aside for capital, much like what schools have. And then that way we have a source of funding to be able to do capital without having to dedicate, you know, pennies on real estate to it, which is also another option. It just will help facilitate better long-term planning. These are the ongoing challenges, the reservoir, the capital, I already just talked about that, diversifying the revenue base, adding commercial, putting all the replacement schedules for all the equipment, you know, in there, and having that rainy day, you know, managed reserves. So looking ahead, I know I've been talking a lot, we are going to have lots of meetings with you all, as I said, March Madness, and on March 26th, we will have a town hall where we'll make a presentation, be able to get direct feedback from any citizen who wants to come. I noticed there's a lot of kids here who I hope are getting extra credit for being at this meeting. Are you getting extra credit? No. Anyway, but I'm glad to see engagement in the process. We've got, you know, a wide range of people and interests that should weigh in. So we'll we can take written feedback, we can take, you know, you'll probably get calls. We'll also have the town hall. We'll have a Q&A process, so as we go through this and you have questions, it may not be something that I can answer on the spot because it requires calculation or some research. And what we'll do is take the time to do that, and then we'll publish the Q&As. So, and the public hearing will be on April 28th for the tax rate. You will set the tax rate, what we're gonna advertise it for. You're gonna do that, I think you have to do it by the 16th, but we'll have to do it by the end of next week, so that's on your schedule. But the actual vote on what the rate actually isn't until April 28th. When you set the rate, you can always go lower, but you can never go higher. So you want to, at this early stage, leave yourself some flexibility is always a recommended good practice. And then, you know, we're gonna have the presentations, of course, available on our website. And then this is just thank you to everybody, you know, all the constitutional officers, everybody who's helped, and especially you all as members of the Board of Supervisors, members of the school board, as we are gonna have, I'm sure, lots and lots of discussion. So, That's all I had. We had, I think next up is, I don't think it's a presentation, but that's all I had, unless you have any questions at the moment.
I think we'll just move on to, everybody that's here. All right. Thank you, Ms. Schafrik. First, outside agency would be discussion of budget with Commonwealth Attorney, Mr. Greene Gonsalvo. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Got the room warmed up for you.
Our budget is not that significant. What we're asking for this year is an increase in salaries. Our operating costs have gone down a little. If you look at it, you'll note that the salary increases in comparison to the state compensation board, we're under them. I'd like to point out especially the administrative assistant paralegal office manager, which is all one person in our office. With the comp board scheme, we really should have two people, but we're not asking for an additional person in that. We're just asking that that position get that increase to bring her closer up to the band on that. Same with the assistant Commonwealth's attorney, getting him closer, and the chief deputy. My salary is fully funded by the compensation board, and so we don't have any additions, and I'm not asking for any increase in that other than what the compensation board provides. It's a pretty simple budget overall, and I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Questions for Mr. Gonsalvo?
I take it you have a lot on your docket.
Our numbers are increasing. I can say that comparatively, you look at some surrounding counties, some of the larger counties we're actually comparable with in the cases that we have. Other counties that are smaller, that actually have the same staff levels we have, if not more, are, they carry maybe half of the docket that we do. One of the big things that we have, one of the advantages we have in Greene County at the moment is just the years of experience, both as the administrative assistant paralegal, who has 15 plus years, the assistant has 20 years in criminal justice, and the chief deputy has over 20 years, along with myself. And so one of the things when you're looking at salaries is, if someone were to leave, what are the levels that we're looking at to be able to get a comparable replacement? And that's what these numbers reflect. That's what it would take to bring in someone with a similar level of experience, or close to that level of experience.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Y'all have a good evening.
Yes, sir. Budget discussion with Commissioner Revenue, Ms. Kite. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and welcome back, Mrs. Dirk. So our budget request for this upcoming year remains pretty consistent with previous years, with only minimal increases due to inflation costs such as postage, etc. We try to utilize the least expensive avenues to keep costs down and therefore keep our budget requests low. So were there any questions you found for that?
Any questions for Ms. Tate? Have none.
I would like to add, while we're all here, to discuss the current fire department ordinance. If you don't mind. In 2024, the board approved a rebate on one motor vehicle not to exceed $500 for qualifying fire department volunteers. At that time, it seemed to be a good incentive. However, we were unable to include all the volunteers, as some do not reside in Greene County, some do not own vehicles, and there are some that can qualify for the full $500 while others own vehicles with lower taxes. And knowing that the board desired at that time to be able to provide a more fair and consistent program, our office began searching for ways to do this. We found that Roanoke County has a volunteer incentive program, which is the package you have in front of you. If the board is able to approve this approach, it would allow each volunteer, each qualifying volunteer, to be able to receive the full incentive payment.
when would you need something approved by to make it effective this tax year?
Their reports are due to us by April first for what we had been doing, but as this would be coming in the form of a payment and not connected with the personal property taxes, I'd still say April first if it's feasible, just to keep things consistent.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was something that we had discussed when we actually initiated that program, that is very important, across, most of the younger people are the ones that are doing all the work now, and, their cars are not getting $500. So, this is interesting, so I think we should look into this heavily, the legal implications of it, and try to get it implemented as soon as possible.
And we added their ordinance for Ms. Kemp to be able to review also.
Excellent, that would be great, thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right, school board budget presentation, Dr. Andrew Whitmore, school superintendent. Welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. I am not Dr. Whitmarsh, but I am Kelly Greer. I am the at-large representative and the chair of the Greene County School Board. I thank you for the opportunity to stand before you on behalf of our students, our schools, and our community. And you've already noticed, but I'm so appreciative of so many of our students who, of their own free will, came out here tonight knowing they wouldn't even get to speak, but just wanted to show their faces so you know who we're talking about tonight. Greene County is growing. New families are choosing to put down roots here, and with them come new students walking through our school doors every year. But growth brings responsibility, and tonight we are here to talk honestly about what it takes to meet that responsibility. Our students' needs are more complex than ever. We are supporting more children with mental health and social emotional challenges. As a therapist in my own practice, I see this increase in need and the toll it has on families. We're also seeing significant challenges among our youngest students that require us to be both proactive and responsive. We need to support these students early in their academic journey so they'll be more successful by the time they get to middle school. Additionally, we are welcoming a growing number of multilingual learners who need dedicated resources to thrive. At the same time, a shift in our local composite index, as you already heard, means the Commonwealth has determined that Greene County has a greater ability to fund education locally, which also means a greater share of that responsibility now falls to us right here in this room. Through all of this, what remains constant is the extraordinary workforce that shows up every single day for our kids. Our teachers, our support staff, our school leaders, they are the single greatest investment we can make in student success. If we don't show them their value, they will leave our schools and our community loses as a result. Dr. Whitmarsh will walk you through the details of our school budget proposal shortly. What I want you to hear from me as your neighbor, a fellow Greene County resident, and as a parent of 2 children in our schools. This budget reflects our shared values: safe schools, strong teachers, and a community that invests in its children's future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Whitmarsh.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
So, I've stood before most of you many times. I've been in this role for 13 years, and I've never, every year when we present a budget, we always present exactly what we need, no more. This year we have a big ask. I've never asked for this much money in new money, but we've got kind of a perfect storm happening. So I want to go through the details. Many of you have seen it. We talked briefly at a different meeting on what the needs would be. I know it's tough, but if you could just kind of bear with me, I'll walk you through the details of what we have going on here today. All right. Am I going up? All right. So,
You gotta push it down there,
well, I was pushing down, and then it's like somebody was fighting against me. All right, so important to look at. Well, we have 6 schools, including a tech center. We're super excited about our tech center. Great things going on there. we had an addition with our remaining COVID funds that happened, that opened just this fall. Okay, Blaine, there we go. Is there just a lag? There's a lag. That's the problem. All right, so, get used to this. All right, so looking at our staffing, you can see the types of positions that we have, the total positions. If you look at, we have the degree types, we have lots of people with a master's degree or higher. 64% of our staff live right here in Greene. We are the largest employer in our community, and we, a majority of our staff live and work here. So, division leadership, and of course our school board members, of which you're standing behind me now. As you know, the budget is a moral document, so everything that you're gonna see reflects our core values and our strategic plan. We live and breathe by that. It's our roadmap for how we go forward in the future. Impact 2027, empowering our community's children for lifelong success. I'll go into all the details. Here are our core values: culture of excellence, safe, supportive, and caring schools, exceptional workforce, connections and partnerships with our community, and resource stewardship. I think it's important to point out our graduates. So you can see there our population, program type. We have a great not only CTE program, we have a governor's school program, we have an early college where many of our students are walking across the stage and getting their associate's degree before they get their high school diploma. It's very impressive for a school division our size, and our kids are excelling and doing very well. You can see our, for the past 3 graduating classes, the diplomas earned, and then you can see the types there, including GED. It's always important to look at context. So here are our demographics. You can see our enrollment here. The enrollment is going up. That is for sure at Ruckersville Elementary, home of Creekside. We have more than 70 more kids just this year. So we're growing. Our English learner population is also growing. We have more newcomers, which are this year than we've ever had before. That means they're new to the country, new to the language, speak very little English. You can imagine the supports that are required there. Our economically disadvantaged students, you can see that there. Total enrollment is in the light green, and the percentage of economically disadvantaged. So you see we have a steady but fairly high percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged. That's why we're a part of the community eligibility provision, which means all of our students, regardless of their status, receive free breakfast and lunch because of our high percentage of students who are economically disadvantaged. And we also have 389 students with disabilities in our schools. Here's the categorical breakdown of our students with disabilities. I think it's always important, and I tend to show this graphic each year because the needs are really changing. You know, we're all experts on school because we all went to school, so we all think of school in terms of how we last experienced it. But the needs are really changing. So if you look at a student, and this is Greene County's demographics in this class, overlaid in this class. So if you look at a class of 20 students, the ones in red would be economically disadvantaged. The blue, the light blue is the English learner, multilingual learner. The yellow is students with special education needs. The purple is chronically absent. So each of those needs, sometimes you have a student who's economically disadvantaged, special education, chronically absent, and a multilingual learner. But each of those students come with unique needs. And what that translates into is different and more responsibilities for our educators to help them to be successful. By the way, if you have any questions as I walk through this, feel you let me know.
Do you still have, scholarships for the students that wanna go to PDD, for, get their associate?
To get their associates, well, if they're taught by our students, by our teachers, it's free. So, and I believe most of the regular program is free at this point, specifically due to some changes. That changes year to year. So if we have a teacher who is qualified to teach dual enrollment, with you're enrolled dually in college and high school, and they can do math, and that teacher leaves, then we may have to pay. They have to pay for online classes as well.
Thank you.
So this is really kind of the story of our budget. Our community's growing. More kids means more students and a greater demand on schools, which means greater needs. The local composite index of ability to pay, it's been mentioned several times tonight, and I do have another slide with more details, but basically the way the state's funding formula works, the state thinks Greene County can afford more. So we're gonna get less state funding by more than I've seen in my time. Student needs are evolving. To maintain safe, supportive, and caring schools, we need to address increased mental health and social emotional needs, more complex behaviors, especially among our youngest learners, and a growing multilingual learner population who require targeted supports.
Is there any data yet on the student needs as they're evolving? Since I believe this is the first year that kids who were born like during COVID are starting to enter the school system in kindergarten, correct? So is there any data on that?
Oh, we could provide you all kinds of data.
Okay. All right.
I don't have that prepared for you tonight. Yes, yes, and you know, needs are different. I think we have a kindergarten teacher sitting here too that would probably give you lots of data. But we do have data on kind of how our students are performing, specifically in reading, but behaviors certainly as well.
Thank you.
And costs are rising for all of us. The cost of living increase for that included this year is 2.8%. Sometimes feels like 20%. Our top priority is absolutely our exceptional workforce. We can't take care of our kids and do what we need to do for our community's children without investing in the exceptional people and provide proactive and responsive supports in our schools. We need to recruit, retain, and support outstanding professionals, provide competitive compensation that reflect the rising cost, and recognize that our staff workload and student needs continue to increase. Just a little bit about our budget development process. Of course, we go through our own process leading up to the school board. The school board approval starts back in the fall, almost as soon as we start the fiscal year. We're working on the next one, and we go through that. This year we had $860,000 in additional requests submitted. That doesn't include raises or any of that kind of stuff. So local composite index, that's one of the biggest influencing factors that we have in this year's budget. So that's a little bit tough to read, but you know the state changes the LCI at the start of every biennium, okay? So previously our LCI was 0.3411, that's what we're in right now. So for example, in the caboose budget this year, we're getting more money because the LCI is different. So, but it's gonna go to 0.3703, which is a massive increase for us. So if you look at the LCI, it's determined by the county's local, the ability to pay education costs based on the standards of quality, and they're adjusted to maintain a 45-55 split across the state. It's all relative, so it's not just about Greene County, it's about where Greene County is and then kind of where every other city and county fluctuates across the board. If you look at the Greene County's numbers, there are 3 indicators. The first is true value of real property. You can see that number there. That's 50% of the formula. The adjusted gross income, 40%, and taxable retail sales, 10%. So that really is the story of why we're in this situation that we're in. Specifically, we're receiving quite a bit less, more than $1 million in state funding, even though we have 90 plus more students. Recruitment and retention continues to be an issue. More teachers are leaving the profession. Others are not coming into the profession. So we are struggling with the teacher shortage as well. Here's just a chart of the past 3 years of the top critical shortage areas in Virginia. I feel like next year the chart will be a little longer even, because most positions are up there. So you can see where there are shortages across the state. This is something we always look at, which is our regional salary data. It's, the county did a compensation a few years ago looking at salaries with employees, and ours is a little more straightforward because education tends to have salary scales, at least in Virginia. Steps 0 through 30, and you can see where we fall on these. The light green, we're right in the middle, so a bachelor's degree and for a master's degree. And what you see there is progression through the career. It's 0 years, 5, 10, 20, and 30. So where we rank in comparison to those cities and counties, which are the ones we tend to, people move around from division to division. You can see with a bachelor's, we're 4th, we rank 4th, master's 6th. The problem is by the time we get to the end of the career, we rank 8th. So we are not competitive, and we are losing teachers at the end of their career. People who have spent a long time in Greene County, as they get closer to that retirement, you're looking at your high 3, and you can go to Charlottesville and Almar or Louisa or wherever and earn more money. So that is where we are less competitive. We know we are not going to be Charlottesville and Almar. We're not trying to get to number 1. We're just trying to remain. We don't want to be last, and we want to be competitive. So we do need work there. So looking at historic revenue, you can see there state, federal revenue there on the sheet. You guys have everything in a little more clear form, but you can see we don't even know yet what our state funding is. As I stood before you not long ago when we were starting, we had that first meeting about the budget. I told you it was Youngkin's budget, right? And Youngkin's not our governor anymore. And so I was really hopeful that we were gonna get more money, and we're not, probably not. We don't know where it's gonna land. But what it looks like right now, there's a 2% salary increase in the House, and that's the largest number, right, usually, beyond basic aid. So compensation 2% in the House, 3% in the Senate, which original budget was, or Youngkin's budget was 2%. So there's not a whole lot more money. There is some in the House version of the budget. There is some flexible money. However, that's not continual money. You can't flexible money if it's one-time money. You can't use that to pay for compensation increases. So we're waiting to find out more about that. There's our debt service over the next few years. You can see we have a little over $9,000 in retiring debt this year. The good news about that is the next 2 years we have more significant amounts of retiring debt. So here's what we have included in our budget proposal. And again, the focus is really on our exceptional workforce. The county's health insurance increase, you came back at 15, ours is 23.2%. That's massive. Unfortunately, we also have, or fortunately, we have more employees, so it's over $1 million for that increase. For a 5% increase for our teachers is $836,000. We do get some state money toward compensation increases. The way it's funded is based on LCI and then standards of quality. So the state contributes some towards compensation, but even if the state says they're giving us a 5% raise, we would not get enough money from them. There always is a local match required. As I shared our salary scales, we are really losing ground in the teacher salary scale. So what we have included is stretching the salary scale out. We currently have 1% between steps, which is by the time you get to the end, we are much less competitive. We would like to include 1.5% between steps, which would stretch the entire scale out. 5% increase for remaining staff, and then we have 5 new positions which are aligned with what I shared previously. An elementary school counselor, we have many more students at Ruckersville specifically, we need to add another counselor. And needs are certainly great. We received a GoTech grant, about $150,000 in equipment to run a class at the middle school. And we need an instructor to go with that, to deal with our youngest students, some with behavioral challenges, a strong starts teacher, and educational support staff member. And then because of our growing multilingual learner population, we need to add an additional teacher in that as well. So looking at our proposal there, you know, we have a gap there. It's obviously not, it's much greater than what Ms. Schafrik has proposed to balance the budget. I'd love to think that the number's it's gonna go down, that gap will narrow as we get more information from the state. I just don't believe it's gonna happen at this point. So we find ourselves in a place needing more than $4 million to balance our budget. I'm a citizen, I'm a taxpayer, I get it, it's a tough decision. However, I think we have to take care of our schools, we have to take care of our kids, we have to take care of our educators who do great things. You know, the kids sitting in here, we have 2 student board members here and lots of other students who came. They're gonna be the ones sitting up here in a few years. And so we want them to be well prepared to make good decisions for our future, right? So we have to take care of our kids, and we do that by taking care of our exceptional workforce. So with that, you can see the categories included there, and we welcome any questions, thoughts, perspectives.
Questions for Dr. Marshall?
I hate to see that LCI, you know.
You're not kidding.
I mean,
You know,
and they had
so painful.
I mean, a lot of money left after, until the government came in.
Yeah, surplus of the state.
We had a surplus, yeah.
Yes. Very.
And you said that this happens every 2 years, correct?
Every 2 years, so when there's a new biennium, the local composite index changes, because the state budget is done on a 2-year cycle.
Right.
So that's the time when it's a new biennium that it changes.
And I know it's very difficult to predict the future, but continued growth in the area, continued raising salaries for people moving to the area, things like that, would probably mean that the state is gonna continuously look at us as being able to fund more locally.
Absolutely.
So I know that's not necessarily a direct conversation for this budget season, but I do wanna point out that this isn't gonna be something that is, a one-time kind of
No, it's not.
discussion.
As a matter of fact, that's a great point. There's a 2-year lag in this data. So this data is from 2 years ago,
Okay.
right? That is used to figure the LCI for the start of this biennium.
Okay, so the numbers that you were showing were from 2
2
years ago on our
So
real
if
property
we look
values.
if we look at now,
Okay,
like the information now is what's gonna be used for the LCI 2 years from now.
right, which doesn't include any Creekside or
Creekside.
any of those other,
Yeah, yes.
yeah, developments.
Yeah,
And
the large jump in real estate value is one of the things that caught my eye when I looked at, you know, the lines, the budget.
Mhm.
And because we've had such an increase, you know, they're like, yep, that's 50% of how we calculate your LCI, so we think you can pay it.
We had the 12th largest increase in the state in LCI.
And what is the LCI shortfall by itself?
So it's hard to pull that out, it's
Plus or
about,
minus.
probably about 1.3. Then we have additional kids, you know, so
Is it nine?
you normally you get more, you would have expected if all else was the same, we would get much more funding this year because we have 90 plus more students. So,
How many students total?
our total enrollment right now, 2780, Kyle, do you have the exact, 20?
I don't have the exact, it's like 27, 81 or.
81, 86, something, close enough, right?
Absolutely. Other questions? It's a lot to absorb, and you absorb it.
Yeah.
So, and also, if you have questions as you absorb it, or want any additional data, we're happy to provide whatever you need.
Sounds good.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Sorry. I think too, the insurance situation is huge. The amount that came in for the insurance portion is more significant than we've seen, than I've ever seen. And I work in an additional county in a school system, where we are consistently not being compensated, or they're not eating the part of our insurance increases. And so I actually make less money than I used to 6 years ago because of the insurance increases that are not being absorbed by the board. And so, we have consistently, since I've been on the board, and I know before that, absorbed up those insurance increases, which I think is huge when it comes to our staff and actually seeing the raises that they're given instead of those being eaten up by increases in their insurance. And that insurance increase is huge. And so I just wanted to bring that up again one more time as a piece that I think kind of gets overlooked a little bit, something that we try really hard to absorb for our staff as well.
Why do you think your percentage is so much higher than the county's, just based on the amount of people that are
So,
enrolled?
no.
The increase, or the
It's so,
conditions of
the
them?
increases are based on claims experience. What I've been told is across the board, prescriptions, there's an issue specifically with GLP-1s, so they won't be covered next year. That's an Anthem thing, you guys have Anthem as well. So that, what I'm hearing is that contributed to some of it, but at the end of the day, a renewal, local choice said their renewals were gonna be between 7% and 25%. We're at the top end of that, but everyone that I've talked to is experiencing higher than normal, renewals. That being said, claims experience also contributes. So we're trying to explore all options to see what we can do there. But at the end of the day, health insurance is expensive for all of us, right?
So it was a 23%.
0.2
22%.
increase.
How much longer is that contract with Anthem, and like, what was the process there? Is that something we can look at in a couple of years?
Well, no, we could look at it now for
Okay.
next year. So, however, one of the issues with local choice is that you have to buy out,
Okay.
right? So if we said we were gonna leave local choice and do an RFP and go to somebody else, there would be a look back period, so they'd look at the claims over the last few months, and there's also a run out period. So they'd get to the end of the 6 months past the start, or past the time we terminate, and charge us potentially for what's out there. So we would be making a change without knowing how much it was gonna cost us to exit.
And also not knowing right off the bat how much it would save as you go into the.
Correct. Now, we could probably so we're exploring that.
Okay.
I, had a meeting today to talk a little bit more about that and figure out, there are other levers we can pull as well. We do wanna take care of our staff, but we also need to be mindful of the costs that we're all incurring.
And I do just want to point out to the rest of the board, I've watched and been at many of the meetings where they've been discussing all this, and they've I mean, I can't even tell you how many different topics you guys have gone over, trying to figure out how to best approach this large problem. And so I just want to, again, say thank you for all the hard work you guys are doing, because now I'm feeling the pain on this side.
Yeah, yeah, it's painful all around,
Right,
isn't
right.
it? Yes, yes. I do wanna note too that if for example, if by chance we cannot give the compensation increase that's included in whatever the final state budget happens to be, we get less state money.
Right.
So part of the state money we're including here is money toward a compensation increase. And you have to give it, meaning the county has to match it in order for us to get all of the funds there.
And so right now, because we don't know, but it was 2%.
So we're based on the
On the
first
Youngkin.
Youngkin's budget.
Right,
So
okay.
we're based on that, which is 2%. House and Senate are at 2 and 3, they're not agreeing on their budget, there's gonna be a crossover budget that will come out, so.
But just so I understand this, if they came out and said 3, we only gave it 2, which is not my recommendation, but then that 1% would, end up we would be getting all the state funding that we would normally get.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, you have to certify that you've given the raise, I'm always fearful, that's my thing. So, you have to certify that you've given the raise in order to get the funds.
Right.
And there are sometimes different ways to do it, you know, that they will allow to do it, but every budget.
I just don't wanna miss it, yeah.
No, we don't wanna mess with that, we wanna make sure we're taking advantage of every dollar that the state is willing to give us.
I'm
Because
sorry,
we
can I
need
say
it.
something else? I just wanted to point out as well, the cost of living increase is 2.8, so if
Right.
we came in at just a 2, we wouldn't
Right.
even be meeting the cost of
Correct.
living, plus then they would potentially have to tack on the additional insurance stuff. I
Right.
mean, they'd be making significantly less than.
Thank you,
Then-
yeah, that's what I'm,
Working harder and making less.
Yeah,
That's
for sure.
So I know it's a lot to absorb, but just bringing up those little pieces that, bring those back up again.
Our taxpayers are in the exact same boat.
yep.
Yeah.
So, insurance board.
Other questions? Okay, well, this is a work in progress.
Thank you.
Sure, we'll talk soon. Discussion of budget with Sheriff Steve Smith, but he just left, so does that mean we can go home?
Major White is here.
We got Josh White. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, county employees. On behalf of the sheriff's office, and the sheriff himself, I'm glad to be here talking to you all today. Just to give you a little bit more of what Ms. Schafrik presented earlier. So, our original, request was for 6 new positions, which are 4 deputies, 1 FOIA officer, 1 front receptionist when we do the extension. We're asking for additional part-time funds to cover the growing demands of multiple court schedules, which include and recommended budget by the county administrator. So last Friday, we spoke with the county administrator. So we decided to narrow our position down to 4. And the biggest thing for those positions are our night shift. We're getting tons of calls, as you all may know, safety of our citizens and our deputies. We definitely need a few positions for the night shift, absolutely 100%. We'll work on the other stuff, but if we could get those, it would be greatly appreciated. The FOIA officer, I do FOIA. I've done over 400 plus FOIAs in the last 3 years for the county, for the sheriff's office. It's a lot.
Give me more.
So our part-time accreditation manager came to me and the sheriff, and we're gonna split those to alleviate have to pay for another position for a FOIA officer. So she and I will be doing that to, help the county, help the sheriff, so. And our front desk receptionist, we're not asking for that anymore, just to help out, so. Anything, like I said, would be greatly appreciated, but those four positions, and I know Animal Patrol, E911, victim witness, which is under the sheriff and his control. We're not asking for any positions there, just some line items with minimal increases just for operating, to help us with operating. all I have. Any questions?
Questions? Sheriff's Office?
Have you gotten your new console?
Honestly, for dispatch?
Yeah.
No, not yet. No, we're hoping to get that renovation done and then, you know, build from there. Absolutely.
That's what I wanted to talk about, was the renovation.
Yes, sir.
I would, I know this is tough, but we really appreciate it if we could get that approved and get that started. The longer we wait, the more it's gonna cost. And with the new data center being approved in Louisa, I've been told that it's hard to get cable and stuff now. And when you can, it's went from like $89 a box to $219 a box. So the longer you wait, the more it's gonna cost. I appreciate that. Here's Mike, talk a little bit about it. He knows more about it than I do.
Yeah, so, ZMM reached out to me, which is the engineer and architect, program, contractor we reached out to. They are really trying to get this ball rolling. They have seen a huge increase in, metal moldings, doors, trim, electrical and copper, components, concrete and aggregation. Tariffs also 50%, you know. Looking like about a 15% increase from the soft bids that we had gotten back in early December and late July. So, I mean, to put that in perspective, you know, that one of the bids was like, roughly about $657,000. I mean, we'll be looking at like $755 now, you know, so they're really pushing. Randy, couldn't be here tonight. He said if y'all want him, he was scheduled to be here on the next meeting. But they have projects that they're trying to get on to get started, so they're really pushing to get this moving forward.
The training simulator we were awarded the grant for, the company's calling us, wanted to get that thing delivered and set up. We can't do that till we get this done. I don't know how much Major White covered about the positions a while ago, but in the last couple of pass downs from the different shifts, we've had several major calls that the deputies had to have a delayed response because they were all tied up. And we really need to get an extra position on each evening shift, if we can, and where possible. I think Davis knows what this is now, since he's got somebody in his family working there. So, I appreciate what y'all can do. I know you're in a tough situation. Any questions?
I know sometimes you have a lot of calls during the night. I never realized that.
We have a lot of calls all the time. Yeah, the volume has really increased with all the growth. And I know you've noticed all the traffic on 29 and 33. And we have a lot of accidents. We don't have a state trooper hardly anymore to help us with the accidents. We have to work all those, almost. We've got one guy that works here in Madison, and most of the time he can't come out. So we had to send 2 guys to the reconstruction school to make sure we could do the most serious accidents that we have, with injuries or death. So it's tightened us up a lot too.
I know you had one during the night, you had 5 calls.
At the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that out, yeah.
Not unusual. All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff.
All right. Discussion budget with Treasurer Donna Marshall. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair and Board of Supervisors. Welcome back. Welcome. I'm gonna talk about just my budget. There's not much, actually to talk about with that, but I do have a presentation to do on kind of the ERP, and the revenue system on our side. I do a presentation that I wanna go over about that. But as far as the budget, it's a 2% increase. Most of the budget is, paper cost, postage is going up, and that's pretty standard what we've done. I have added one line item under professional services, and that's specifically for any tax sales that we do. We have to have an attorney for that. They have started working this past year on some of those, or this current fiscal year on that, and I've seen one $4,000 bill come in, and another one's getting ready to come in as well. Previously, there hasn't been a line item for that in the budget, and we do have to have that. That is state code, and the attorney has to handle those. So I did put $15,000 onto that line item. I don't know what it's gonna cost. I'm just kind of roughly going off what I've seen so far. So other than that, not much has changed, just an overall 2% increase for that.
Any questions? Okay,
Any questions?
no questions?
Right along. And this is,
If you push the down button.
advance it. Thank you.
It does have a delay, so just know that.
Those sorts of ones. Alright, so when Cathy was presenting, she talked a little bit about the ERP, so I'm just gonna go in a little bit more in depth with this, mainly just, I'm speaking on behalf of my office and the Commissioner of Revenue. I know she left, she was gonna tune in when she got home, but she gave me her blessing to present on behalf of both of us. So modernizing the revenue system, the statutory revenue platform, driving the county's financial life cycle. Okay, so the revenue life cycle. Revenue initiates and drives the county's financial cycle. When county administrator was presenting, she was showing you that pie chart. She was showing you the real estate and how much tax revenue and the personal property, and that's our largest revenue buckets, right? So that comes from what our constitutional offices do, the treasurer and the commissioner of revenue. So the commissioner is assessing, she's applying the tax calculation, it's flowing over to me for the billing, the collections, and the compliance with state code and making sure that we're following all of that. So that's kind of a little life cycle that we're looking at with revenue. So 2 systems, 2 roles. So I'm kind of going to use a vehicle for this, just to give you a good analogy. So engine, that's our revenue system, and I look at that as an external system. Dashboard is your enterprise system, and that's kind of what our county administrator has been talking about, and that's an internal system. So for the revenue system, that serves the public under statutory authority. So by code, we have to choose what platform that we're going to use. We're responsible for that platform because we're elected officials. If you're in a larger locality that doesn't have a constitutional office, officers like Fairfax, for example, they're a large locality and they don't have a treasurer, they don't have a commissioner of revenue. That may fall under a tax department or a finance department. And so when you talk about an ERP system that does everything that makes sense in a locality like that, it might make sense in a larger locality, but we're a smaller locality and we have constitutional officers and we have to be responsible for those systems. So our system executes assessment, billing, collections, and compliance. It generates and collects the county revenue, and it interfaces directly with the citizens. So what we do directly affects the citizens. And then when you look at the dashboard, so you got the engine that drives, right? And then you got a dashboard. So we've got all this revenue coming in. What are we going to do with it? Well, that's where the enterprise system comes in. That's your internal functions. So you've got accounting, budgeting, reporting, HR. So that system's going to organize and display the financial results. It's going to reflect the activity generated by the revenue system. So I kind of want to identify these 2 different systems since we're talking about kind of moving to more modern systems. Our current revenue engine. So Cathy was talking about this a little bit, trying to determine when that was introduced. So the legacy AS400 based architecture was introduced in 1988. We use the company Bright, and so Tony Bright started that company in 1985, and there's actually still a treasurer here in Virginia that actually, he was the first treasurer that went with Tony in 1985, and they had an accounting system. So I think that's probably what maybe we had before we got the AS400. So we may have had that earlier in the early 90s here. And then and so then they developed what we know it today is BAI, Bright, whatever we want to call it. And so we partnered with them for that particular municipal software on April 1st of 1998. So this system was designed primarily for heavy internal processing, so processing large volumes of data. So banks love this system, treasurers love this system, commissioner of revenues love the system. That's why it's still around today. It's a workhorse. But it has limited integration flexibility. It's a limited direct online citizen interface. I don't know how many times, even myself included, can I just go online and pay? Can I pay by ACH? We would all love that capability, but our system doesn't have doesn't have that. We'd have to get another third-party system to try and integrate with our current system to be able to even do that. Structured around batch processing workflows rather than real-time web-based analytics. So if someone comes in and makes a payment today, they can't see that payment reflected until we batch everything at the end of the day. If there's an issue and we can't batch, then they're not gonna see that until we batch. You know, technology today, if you make a payment, you can leave and pull up your account and you can see that your payment's processed. And you feel good that you know that that was taken care of. So this is kind of the era that we're working in currently. It's a stable system, but it's aging infrastructure. And there's been a lot of changes with Bright recently. One of their veteran, I guess he was their IT person, and he left. And he had been there for quite some time. And when he left, we kind of saw some changes. And then another lady that worked with him for, I think, 15, 20 years, she unexpectedly passed. And so we've seen that affecting things. So what used to be a 2-hour work ticket, when I would put one in, I'd get a 2-hour turnaround time, it's 2 weeks now. So, unless it's something simple. But if it's something that's an issue, 2 weeks. So, there's some concerns there. We talked about that maybe they might try looking at building out and doing another system. Well, I'm not interested in being a lab rat, because I kind of feel like that's what's gonna happen. And I don't think we need that for our locality. They were actually gonna sell out to Edmonds, I think about 1.5 years ago, and then that fell through. I'm not sure what happened with that. So we know that they're looking elsewhere. They lost 2 of their key people. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? Now, take you back. Let's reminisce. So the AS400 that we're using, this is when it was built. So if you can remember that era, I like to call it the beige era. Everything was beige. If you look at that ad there in the middle, that's actually an IBM ad from the 80s, and you can see the green screen. If you look to the right, that is my screen right now. You see my little initials up there, but that is the screen. If you come in and make a payment today, that's the screen that I'm pulling up, the same screen that we pulled up 30 years ago. Hasn't changed. Some of the functionality has changed, but I think also Cathy had shown this screen as well from their side. So the world today, look at the difference. You know, we don't have a Walkman, we have AirPods. You can get any movie, you don't have to go to the theater. You can get it right on your TV. The graphics on your Game Boys or your Nintendo Switches, your laptops, your phones can do everything a computer can do. Your watch can do everything a computer can do now. And then we have cloud interfaces. We don't have the big room with the big computer and the big database now. Everything's cloud technology. So modern revenue engine. So if we were to go to a modern revenue engine, again, just like our old one, it's designed to support tax administration under Title 58.1 Code of Virginia. There's integrated assessment and billing, real-time taxpayer account view, online citizen self-service, built-in reporting and analytics, customizable billing and notices, integrated delinquency enforcement tools. We connect to DMV through our system, and that's how we put holds on accounts or things like that. Some treasurers and commissioners file state taxes on behalf of citizens. We don't do this in this locality, so some of the other localities will connect to ERMs and things like that, or other state sites. So that's all built into the revenue models. And if you look here, this is actually technology that's out there today. So that same treasurer that I told you that was the first treasurer that went with Bright back in 1985, 2 years ago, he switched to this system. So he used Bright for all those years until 2 years ago, and this is the system that he has switched to, and he's very much a man that does not like change, loves this system. Just this first screen up here is a dashboard. And you can see the little pie chart there. So the green is his paid taxes for this year, and the yellow is his delinquent taxes at this point in time. He can click on that pie chart, and it can give a list of everybody that's paid. If he clicks on the yellow part, he can get a list of all the delinquent taxpayers there. The next screen is just more detailed information if he were to go into a real estate tax ticket. Down that side over there are notes. And so what happens between the Commissioner of Revenue's office, this is kind of a running note system. If the commissioner abates a tax, we can see it right there in real time that was done. A lot of times we send them over there because, they say, oh, I got rid of this car last year. Okay, you gotta go to the commissioner, we've gotta go over there. We don't see that abatement until we close at the end of the day. Remember that batch processing? Here it's real time, we can see what they did. We don't have to call over and say, did you do that? If we update an address, it updates her system. Her office is the office of record for addresses. So, we have to update it on our side, we have to print a copy and we send it to her to update it. Here, it talks both ways, right? She updates it updates our building. If we update it updates her commissioner's side. So that's the type of technology that's available for, revenue systems now. Technology environment then and now, it's kind of what I was saying, but now, or what we've been using is a centralized computing era, so a terminal-based interface, where now it's a browser-based user interface, the batch processing versus real-time processing, structured predefined report libraries. I know finance, can't get anything out of this system, and so to me, it's almost like it's just a big data bank at this point, right? We've got all this data in there, but to do anything with it, we have to export the data. We have to put it in Excel. That's how they do all of their, their functions. That's how I have to do my functions. I have to do my bank rec in Excel. I have to export billing, and I have to put that in Excel. I have to send it to our printer. So it's almost just like it's a data bank, and we export it, we do the work, and then we do what we need to do with that. Whereas if we're in this web-based architecture, everything's integrated and we don't have to export it, right? It can already do those functions because technology is advanced that much. It can do it in the system as it should. The old system, staff-driven data process, and it's manual management, basically what I was just saying. Modern web-based architecture, citizen self-service functionality. Almost every single new system now would have the functionality for a citizen to log in, look at real time at their account, say, okay, I wanna pay this, and this, and process their payment right there in the system. And then see that payment. So, another beige era truck. So, the VAI Bright has served us well. Just
Wrong brain truck.
I knew somebody was gonna say that. I like Chevys. Anyway, they're, just like the old Chevy truck, durable, dependable, still operational, but it's manual, right? You had to roll up the window, there weren't automatic windows, it was designed for a different environment, inexpensive. My son, who's 11 years old, keeps telling me I want a square body truck when I turn 16, and those things are $45,000 and $50,000 if they're fixed up. Just like that old truck, if you tried to buy that now fixed up, it's expensive to maintain an old system. They were here. Social services, I'm trying to get them into our positive pay with the bank, and I'm having to build out something in VAI right now. And, they told me they have to do a quote. Well, it's just an amount of characters, like it might take 30 characters and it needs to expand to 80 characters. So I thought, okay, $200, $300 quote. It came back at $800. Like, that's absurd to me. But that's what we're talking about, and that's just a small change. Imagine any big changes we have to do. So it's just gonna become more expensive the older that technology is. The road has changed. Then we've got this big, beautiful truck. Fully integrated systems, real-time diagnostics, automated systems, designed for high demand environments, building safety and compliance controls. And again, that can just relate to the difference in the old system and the new system. Different systems, different authority. Revenue system, external, constitutional officer authority. Enterprise system is internal administrative authority. Again, our system established by statute directly serves citizens, executes collection under state law. System selection falls under the constitutional responsibility. The enterprise system, the internal workings, manages internal operations, financial reporting, HR functions, supports organizational coordination, falls under administrative governance. Authority and accountability must align. Adopting an established revenue system, risk and cost controls. One of the things that for our offices, the constitutional offices, if we are choosing a new revenue system, one of the nice things is that there's, other localities have already done the legwork. And they have riders that the county can ride on, and so that's gonna be a cost and time savings. Proven system interfaces used by other Virginia localities, they're already using these products that we're thinking about. we avoids customer ERP module development. What we don't wanna do and what doesn't make sense, especially since we're constitutional officers, is having an ERP system and building out for the commissioner and building out for the treasurer. Reduce implementation risk and long-term maintenance costs. Peer network support across Virginia constitutional offices. I can't tell you how many times I've called other treasurers and said, you know, I wanna do this function, does our system do it? Somebody else that has Bright, and they'll say, sure, they'll just send me the process and I just do it, that's free, it's free, it doesn't cost anything. If we build out something for our office, we lose that peer network. You know, we're gonna have to pay for everything that we need to do. If we forget or we don't realize that we need to, you know, that we needed to add something in, then we're gonna have to build that out. Shared product enhancements through vendor updates. Another nice thing is that usually when these revenue systems, let's say a locality wants to create something. I know one of the localities had recently done something with land use. And so what happened is they created that, they paid for that, but then on the next update it rolled out to every other locality. Funding structure phase 1. So Cathy talked a little bit about this. She had $300,000 in there with $50,000 coming to each of our offices. What I'm just asking is that we allocate that to the constitutional offices CIP, so we are responsible for that. The funding follows our responsibility. The authority aligns with our accountability. The revenue operations remain governed by statutory authority. Phase 1 includes defining system needs, vendor evaluation and selection process, integration planning, security and compliance review, develop phased implementation plan. And this is in coordination with the county and with what they're doing. It's not something we're looking to rush and get. Our timeline is the county's timeline. It's something that needs to be a coordinated effort that we're doing together. We don't want an old system connected to a new system, no matter which one is going first. You wanna try and do that as a coordinated effort. But we also need to have that funding allocated to us so we can do what we need to do as we move forward. So we talked about the revenue life cycle, so this is the financial life cycle. The engine drives revenue, the dashboard organizes it. So we kind of have our external tasks there and then our internal tasks. We don't design the dashboard before choosing the engine. That's all I have. If you have any questions, happy to answer.
Do you use cloud?
What's that?
Cloud, do you back up anything with cloud?
So it just all goes to whatever our one IT person is doing. So how is that
He's doing
backed
a
up?
tape backup.
What's that?
It's a tape backup every day.
Every day.
Yeah. Pretty much, well, I mean, there's sometimes where it fails or, well, you know what, the problem with doing it once a week is, say you're doing a tape backup and the power fails. Now you've lost a whole week, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't try to do it, and not every work day week is what we're trying to do.
I think every Monday there's something.
And every Monday there's a bigger batch.
It's like an update that comes through.
Right.
So again, that's that batch processing that's happening too.
Cause they are updating the code for Bright as well, you know, as well as we're trying to keep our data. They're also updating, cause they're pushing out teeny little changes. There's always security patches. There's always, you know, like all those kinds of things that you have to push. And it's a software's service, so.
Right.
It's not running on our premises. Well, we have a server here where some stuff's running, but they're doing all the coding and everything in Tennessee.
Very nice in Tennessee. You just said something that reminded me. Those little updates that they're pushing out, sometimes they'll affect, you know, our side of things, and those are when I'm putting in my help desk tickets and then it's taking 2 weeks.
Right.
We had something where, our receipts started, showing old balances that aren't collectible anymore, and, you know, people were getting their receipts and they're like, what is this balance that I owe? Well, it was an old balance that also the system needs to be cleaned up, but it should have been, you know, written off the non-collectible balance. So they see this, and so it took them forever to figure out how to not show that.
We're having a problem now. We do ACH for payroll. Everybody gets paid ACH. As we're adding vendors onto ACH, what's happening when we run payrolls is pulling the whole file, not just, yeah, so is
But
having
that's your-
more and more issues.
So that's your limited functionality, so we tried to move forward and we implemented the ACH, the new ACH process, so we can pay vendors by ACH. You know, we've had some check fraud, situations, and so, you know, they came to me and said, can we start doing ACH? So we've implemented that process, but, you know, we're trying to do something that's new technology now, but now we're limited by exactly what she's saying. So it is something we need to look at, you know,
And again, I think I've heard other things that have boxed you guys in as far as like even with payroll, where you can only do it like once a month, is that correct? Versus being able to.
The amount of, because we're doing so much processing outside of it.
Right.
Cooper and Dan here, the shadow system of Excel.
Okay.
It's the shadow
Doesn't
system
integrate.
of what is
Yeah,
there.
yeah. So
They're
you're-
doing more stuff outside the system than we could possibly do inside the system, even to create this budget.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
all of that is 100% in Excel, and it's painful.
Yeah,
And-
if you guys make a change, we have to change 7 different parts of the
And
system.
it just,
Okay.
the potential for failure is,
Yeah.
you know, like, and data integrity is
Right.
not great, and so, we're not gonna be in a situation where we're gonna keep adding more and more staff as we're growing. We have to be smart and use technology, because the technology absolutely exists, and, for many reasons, you know, being able to do, for people to be able to go online and make payments, for example, and have that be an easy process and see the payment. You know, that's gonna help with a lot of our security and fraud issues, you know. We do, have this integrated system, so we gotta worry about, you know, the backbone of the system and how all of us are integrating everything, and.
So, just for clarity for myself, the questions are how much this fiscal year and who's running the initial project for?
well, it's really 2 projects.
Okay.
So you have to look at it as the revenue system and then the system,
Okay.
and what she's talking about, when she's talking about that they're also exporting everything to do the budget. You know, when you go with an ERP system, they have all these modules, so they're gonna have an accounting module, they'll have a budget module, they'll have a procurement module. In HR, they'll have a
So this will
payroll
be 2
module.
separate systems, you'll have the revenue one.
Right.
Admin and revenue.
Right, and then probably tie it together, so that you
Well, you'll have to have an
can push the
interface to
information
connect,
over.
yeah,
Okay.
unless you have the same system, but usually, you know, a revenue system isn't necessary, they might have an add-on finance, but that's kind of what Bright has been, and it clearly, you know, hasn't worked, I mean, it did it one time.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of other localities where the treasurers and commissioners will have a certain, payment revenue or revenue system, and then somebody else has the ERP, like the county, the finance department, they'll have an ERP, and there's already infrastructure there, so if we determine who each of us is going with, and we look out at the other localities and see if they have them, then that interface is already built. And so then you don't have to create that, you don't have to have someone to create that, so that's another opportunity. I'm not sure if Cathy's looking to build something from the ground up, or if she's wanting to get another package. I don't
Yeah,
know,
no,
we had
yeah.
briefly talked at my budget meeting, but we didn't.
Yeah, so I think the key is though, we have to have a project management office to manage all the interfaces, all the comings and goings. We have one IT guy, you know, we should be duplicating effort in a lot of ways, so that's the clearinghouse of how you do it. And I dropped off, some, like, we'd have to set up a steering committee, project management office, that's all of us sitting on it so that we stay in sync, cause that's gonna be very important, cause the information not only is flowing between, you know, the treasurer and commissioner revenue, it's flowing over to us in a major way as well. So that's what the consultant to come in and stand up some of these committees where we can, you know, it's not saying you can't do stuff, it's like, what are you doing so we can make sure we're all working together? Oh, you've got this resource, we've got this resource, making sure we got the interfaces set up. Kevin's gonna be supporting all these efforts, so we need to make sure from a planning out, a project management, planning out of resources, that the same week something big's happening on this, it's not happening on the other. And for all we know, it may end up being one product, highly unlikely, but it could be. There's endless possibilities and we have to sort through them. There's a lot of, you know, and even though there's endless possibilities, we already have like it's narrowed down already to a few based on what other people are doing, cause local government and our functions, are unique enough that there's products that won't work very well for us, particularly for schools. You know, we have to really worry about what the schools needs but we're all sharing the same general ledger, and that's the issue.
Okay.
Everything, that's the backbone of everything, so we need to make sure that all the pieces that we have work together, and we bring up the pieces that we need in the right order. So the general ledger, because it's a backbone, that has to be going first, and there's a lot of decisions and everything that has to be made. There needs to be someone coordinating all of that, and we have to have those different committees and clearinghouses.
When you determine systems too, they'll have an implementation team and that type. They'll have a project manager as well.
All right, that sounds like, interesting stuff.
Fun time.
Glad I don't have to use that every day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, guys and gals. So, next meeting, Thursday, we will have, how many departments? Ms. Schafrik?
It's like 7,
7.
but some of them are gonna be a lot shorter than others.
Okay.
It'll be a lot shorter than tonight, let me put it that way. They're just gonna
So
be
we can do a
able,
little more work next time.
pardon?
We can do a little more work next time.
Yeah, well, so for example, Adam will come in and talk about vehicle maintenance, you know, like, and how we doing it. Basically focusing in on the replacement schedule, and if you have any questions about the heavy lift that's being requested or whatever, maybe 10 minutes, you know, depending on how many questions you have. Others may be slightly longer, but even water and sewer, which might be one of the bigger ones, it won't take that long.
My feeling is, at the next meeting, we need to be prepared to go line by line. We had discussions in our initial workshop, and I thought the board's consensus, minus Ms. Dura, was, I'm talking about not school. Flat budget, plus mandates, plus a few key personnel, plus limited capital improvements. That's what we had discussed at our workshop, where we kinda left at, minus schools. That's just our internal operation. So, I appreciate all the work that went into all this, but that's kind of where my mind's going, next time. So I think if we go line by line in our own shop first, we can address each and every one of those things in the presentation tonight and see how it all stacks up, see if we can, raise a little money within our own operation, before we move forward. Because the one thing that we do have to do on the 10th or the 12th is actually, you know, advertise a tax rate. So I think it'd be best to see what we can do there right off the bat. And if y'all don't agree, let me know. But that would be how I think we should go at it. And now we've done this line by line thing before, it moves pretty quick. We'll just go through the book. In the meantime, we can all think about questions that we might have, along the way. But I mean, that's where I'm at with that. Any other discussions on that?
I'm not sure.
I'm talking about ours.
Yeah, our discussion. Okay, so line by line. I did just want to point out that, like, looking at the school's budget, looking at the county budget at this point, right? The presentation that you gave, Cathy, has the school's budget set at the 2.8, correct? So if and I know this is just thinking about numbers and stuff, I think it would be at least an additional 4.1 cents, right? So not being able to 4 cents on top of the 9 cents that you already asked for to balance this current budget. If we were to just say yes across the board, right? So we're looking at, what is that?
14 or so.
13 cents,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, which puts us about, what, 82 cents on the $100 or whatever. So I'm just putting those numbers out there, that those would be, you know, what we would have to be thinking
That's
about.
why we have to roll our sleeves up and get to work.
Right, exactly. So,
I mean, in regard to the school's budget, I understand the LCI completely.
Yep.
Frankly, the timing of lumping all those projects together in a year that the LCI has gone south is it's, probably the most draconian change I've ever seen in my time on the board, and I don't know how we would ever absorb that. And I think that the other part of that is that, you know, our job is to make sure that we provide budget stability or revenue stability through our budget, so we don't have the, and as you pointed out, this thing is gonna be going on for a while. This is a trend, this is a long-term trend. And frankly, I'm looking for a way to streamline that to where it's incremental. But I can't get my head wrapped around that tonight.
No.
So, I just would like to make that statement. I know the schools have a reserve, and I would like for Ms. Schafrik to get all the information together. None of us know what that means, entails, what the rules are, or what the board did, the board didn't do. I would like to have all that available for the next meeting. Unless anybody has anything.
And invite Dr. Whitmire to talk about it.
Absolutely, anybody can come to our workshop.
Yeah.
So, that would be my request. Other comments, questions?
We definitely gotta pass it and it's a sport.
Yeah.
And it's, and a lot of it's due to the state, not due to
I think as time goes on, like all across the board, the trend is like worse than it's ever been as far as pushing everything down to the locality. Which my biggest pet peeve on that is that, you know, income tax at the state is relative to what you make. Our tax on your real estate is relative to what your worth is, which might not necessarily reflect what's in your pocket. And that's the injustice of the state's constant attack on us, in my opinion. We fought this for years. The last time I was on the board, we fought it too, but it wasn't so bad. I mean, it wasn't like the death throw every time it happened. It was incremental, you know.
And I do wanna just be cautious as we work through all this too. I think, the budget calls for some use of some debt vehicles, right, for capital improvements, for purchasing things and stuff like that. And I don't wanna just be kicking the can down the road, right, as far as, you know, making us then have to look at a higher tax increase in a future year to kind of pay for something that we did
I
today.
guess that's the biggest concern, right? Because if we go for the enchilada now, we still have a huge water project that we're doing that what could go wrong, right? And then any other emergency that comes down the pipe, with our operations in the county, you know, we could be undoing everything that we've worked really hard to do the last 2 years. And, you know, it's very interesting, the inflationary aspect, how governments, both local and state, have actually benefited by that. Because nobody's equalized that out, right? And so the numbers that you're looking at today are much different than they were like in 21, 22. And we tried to do that, right? As we adjusted our stuff down, we're trying to be a little more real on dollars. But this storm is definitely brewing.
The last thing I'll plug on that is having that strategic long-term vision is also an important thing this year with the planning and zoning redoing the comp plan. And so we need to make sure that our priorities coming from the constituents feed back into how we're funding the policies for the.
So, Mr. Friedel will be presenting the CIP, overlay, soon.
Okay.
So we can use that. I mean, that's obviously, we have to actually adopt it, right? Chris has already dealt with it. But that's obviously huge for that long-term planning. And it also allows us to accept proffers, right? It allows us to, you know.
Terry can do the grant writing on any of those things.
Exactly, but they've gotta be on the plan, even if it's crazy and out 40 years. You cannot accept any money to do that. It's gotta be out that far, so. I had something else, but I can't remember what. Oh, can we, look into this Roanoke County thing?
Yes.
It's very interesting. I read just a little bit of it. Basically the departments get the money and the departments pay the people, but it's $500, so it's under a threshold, which would be very fair compared to the way we're doing it now, and probably cheaper to actually implement, where you would just cut a check, and then they would have to establish the criteria and prove to us that, you know, the criteria was met. So, can we just have the legal review of that as it holds in all this?
I do have a question. The security officers for the schools, does that fall under the school budget or for the sheriff's?
It's under the sheriff's budget.
Okay.
Any other comments, questions? We good with that plan of attack? Okay.
You need a motion.
I need a motion. second? We have a motion and a second to adjourn the, workshop. Roll call vote, Mr. Lamb?
Aye.
Mr. Hartog?
Aye.
Mr. Schoolsby?
Aye.
Mr. Durham?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you all.